Notice the experience of the body. How the thinking mind is happening. And how you perceive through your senses. Even if the body is very prominent in your experience, you are more subtle than that. You are the experiencer of the body. Awareness itself. This aspect of you does not change. It's not changeful in nature. It's just the isness of now. And this awareness this stillness is not constrained. The egoic mind believes itself to be riddled by problems, situations, and a relationship to time. But all these things come and go. They are transient in nature. They never last. And they happen within awareness. This simple retreat from the identification with the body and the senses shows your true nature. Thoughts can come and go. Experiences come and go. But you stay as you are. The egoic mind can threaten you, try to push your buttons, trigger you with interesting thoughts of all kinds. But as long as you stay as you are, and not being drawn into the old habits of the mind, you will be in the freedom of the now. Recognizing the present is not difficult. The accessibility to the now is 100%. It is your nature. We are used to the egoic mind, so we think that it's normal, that it's natural. But this eternal loop of becoming things that the egoic mind presents, what does it lead to? The egoic mind doesn't want things to end. It wants a continuous loop. But as much as the egoic mind is upheld, it's always transient. It always goes in the end. The beauty we experience in this life is always the stillness shining through. In the sense of deep happiness, it's always the present that makes it shine. Awareness is your nature. And the spiritual search is usually the search for awareness. Which is already here. There is no distance between you and it. How can it be? Awareness is not the idea of awareness. It is beingness itself. You cannot lose awareness. It is your nature. You can open your eyes, move your body, stretch out your legs if you need to. This weekend I was in Gävle giving satsang at the yoga school. And after the satsang we had tea together, the group, and a woman said, I was at your satsang here last year. I was there 1 year ago as well. And she said, it was so much better this time. And there was a few of the other people who were there who were also at this. And they said, but it was not that much different. It was also very good last time. Yes, but last time I didn't understand anything. And it might seem strange that I sit here and talk about the same things week after week, year after year. But you change. you hear different things. Different things stand out. You might be hung up on a word, or you have grasped something that makes it clear. So we walk through the same things again and again. And for me, it's always different. It's always new. It's always the first time. And it might seem like there are many ways of approaching the present. But in actuality, it's all the same. You look for the identity of you. And what do you find? You see repetitive thoughts of becoming, the idea of being a person, again and again. But is that really you? What can be aware of that becoming? Isn't that prior to the idea of becoming? Of course it is. If I can watch the bell, I have to be prior to the bell. The same in here. What is first? If you look for yourself, if you look for the idea of I, where do you end up? Do you find a phenomena? And if you find a phenomena, what is aware of that phenomena? You can say, but I am the body. Okay, but what is aware of the body? What can determine that the body changes? What can determine that the idea of the person changes? And this is not a part of you that is an analytic and an intellectual part. It's not that kind of determined. It's just awareness. Just seeing without words. The aspect in you that notice that there is words or that there is an idea of something. And perhaps you have a sadhana where your experience is that there is a stillness, deep, vast stillness that you come to. It's expansive silence. It's limitless. It feels so empty. And even if you approach it from that angle, what is that space? It's just awareness. And if you're deeply devotional, you like to bow to something greater. Your heart yearns for devotion. You might like to sing bhajans or songs of devotion. But that is also the same. It's surrendering the egoic mind to awareness. So it seems like many different approaches, but everything is the same. It's just different on the surface. And people seem to be attracted to it, to the surface of things. So then there are many expressions. And the beauty of your sadhana is that you will notice that all true sadhana just brings you to the same thing. If you do a sadhana and it has to be upheld forever, it is not a true sadhana. There has to be coming to see what you are in your sadhana. Coming to a place of awareness. And look what makes that permanent change. Because there are so many practices that can be upheld, and when you do them, you feel nice. So look for the practices that change your outlook, to make you being able to rest as you are. And I'm not saying that all these other sadhanas don't have their place. Of course they do. But at some point they have to be questioned. If you do the same sadhana for a long, long time and nothing changes. Your mind should become more peaceful, more silent. And if that is not the outcome of your practice, come to me and tell me about your obstacles. with identity comes always desires and bondage. You get addicted to things, even to come to satsang, because it feels nice. But the goal is always freedom. It's not a freedom in time that is somewhere else. It is actually here now. And you might say, but I don't feel very free. I feel riddled by thoughts and desires, longing, all these things. But all those things still happen in awareness. It's just a question of belief. So why is the mind so sticky? Why do the thoughts come back? And if you watch your mind, you might have noticed that they're also pretty much the same, day after day. They can take on new shapes, new situations, but they're pretty much the same. The stickiness comes from belief. Comes from desire. Comes from the idea of being a person. Comes from the connection to the idea of time, of a future for this person and a past for it. But all those things still happen in awareness. You are not a thing. You're not a phenomena. You are the knowing itself. you have actually no features. You cannot be destroyed, or hurt, or broken. Just recognize your nature. Your true nature doesn't care for hope or hopelessness. It doesn't care about becoming. It's just as it is. I cannot show it to you, but you can be it. And that is a beingness without the center. Where is awareness located? Where is it in relationship to everything? Does it have a spot? It's always here. You might say that you're taken by your thoughts and that it feels far away. What is the distance to awareness? What is the distance to the now? We run around in this life, dreaming ourselves into the idea of our situation. Notice what is happening in the present. Notice if your problems are here, or your situation, or whatever idea you have. Notice if it's here. Notice the quality of this moment. Just this stillness. You recognize the stillness, right? Just notice the quality of it. You don't have to try to do anything with it. You don't have to try to deepen it or make it more or abandon all those things. Just recognize. And maybe the mind is struggling, it is trying, looking for things, avoiding things, all this. You just notice the struggling mind. Maybe trying to grasp what I say, whatever it might be. And if you stay here, you notice that you can stay even if there are some thoughts coming, pulling. You stay. And if you stay, it might appear a bit disorienting. Why is that? Because you break your patterns. You're not going with your mind as usual. Even if it feels disorienting, just stay as you are. Eyes open or closed does not matter. If you recognize this space, there's the possibility to always come back to it. In every situation you're in. You're waiting, doing something simple perhaps. Notice the mind. Notice the space. And always come back to the sense of I. It seems strange. The egoic mind says it all the time. I, me, mine. For you to believe in something. But when you really look for the I, it's nowhere to be found. Your nature is not a thing. So when you look for the I, you will always end up in the silence. You will always end up in beingness. You will always end up in the present moment. That's why so many traditions say, look for the source. Look for yourself. See what you find. And why the most prominent question is, who am I? We put in so much effort in our lives, do all these things, and so few people put any effort in knowing themselves. We have the ideas of what is good and bad, and we struggle and we put in all this effort without knowing who is the source of it. Blinded by our own arrogance, we go about in life pushing on other people what we think is right and trying to stop them from the wrongs. Trying to convince people of our ideologies and beliefs. And no one seemed to like it. And it just creates so much fragmentation, tribalism, the idea of them and us. And I understand why identity feels safe. But it's always stuck. There is so much space. There's so much space. It just lies beyond beliefs. I think everyone wants to be happy. But they would prefer if happiness were an external event. Because otherwise you would have been lied to your whole life. And it's hard to admit that your parents might be totally wrong. But the good news is that it's not an external event. And it's not bound by circumstances. That is such good news. You don't even have to be rich to be happy. But do anyone question happiness? Do you question your beliefs, your ideas of what it is? The things that you're striving so hard for in your life. Do you question them? Do these things really make me happy? The end goal that I'm looking for. Will that be happiness? Fulfill all your dreams and notice that it makes no difference. You feel happiness in the moment when you accomplished something, and then again the mind wanders. It dreams of the next goal, and it thinks that this achievement is the creation of happiness. But this happiness is always here. It's just that there's a projection of expectation to the future, and the happiness seems to be there. And when the expectation is gone for a while, you have a moment that where you feel really accomplished and happy. And you believe that that achievement is what creates the happiness. I want you to really look at this, because this dynamic is the most common deception that we do to ourselves. And almost everyone is in on it. So look. And the difficulty with really looking is that you have to abandon all those ideas. And you have to go through a part of it which is the fire of what am I worth? Is one of the things the egoic mind is very much afraid of, that there is no meaning. But beyond that is happiness. So the question is, do you dare to look? Because at first, it's just that the mind seems chaotic. There's just so much going on, pulling in 1,000 directions. And when the awareness of the mind starts to be there, you might say, it's gotten even worse because you're now aware of everything. But when the mind starts to settle a little bit, it becomes a question if you dare. For many people, it feels like you sit in meditation and you come to a certain point. And it starts to scare you. It feels like you're moving into the unknown. This is usually the experience of the mind. And this is the point where you need to have faith. And if you lived a life where everything felt like it was up to you, that faith part will be difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. When I experienced it, it felt like I have to become some strange religious person. That I have to have faith in something greater than myself. And I think I pushed it as far as I could, trying to stay with the sense I can do this. But that is a battle that you cannot win. At a certain point you will say, I surrender. I do not know how to go forward anymore. Effort just takes you to a certain point, then you need faith. It's not a way of convincing you of something, it's just a matter of fact. But for me, I had the idea that everything that had to do with faith felt like something created. And I didn't understand that there is faith, that it's not a belief. Can you follow me on that? You can call it trust, you can call it whatever you like. And how you invoke that is very personal for most people. It's very individual. For some people, it's just very natural, even if they never had a faith. They just find a way. For others, it needs a little bit of force to just break the old patterns of resisting it. And it's funny because when I've been in India, there's so little talk about this part. Because in the Hindu tradition, it's very common. You have faith. Everyone has it. They know that you have to trust in God, they would say. Ishvara, Shiva, Vishnu. But if you've grown up in Sweden or in the West, you might have other ideas with you. The idea that you can create your own life, that you're self-sufficient, that you're not dependent on anyone. All these things. The idea that religions are bad, all this. So that also makes faith something not to be trusted. And that is a strange thing. Because it's so natural. When the trust is there, you will just feel like this is the most natural thing. And you will also notice that your sadhana is not really a choice. Because the longing for awareness to know itself, the existential drive towards truth, just happens. We can have all sorts of ideas around it. But it's also a very natural thing. You can resist it or allow it. Your mind can say there are other things that are more important. It can say, I don't have time for this right now. I cannot prioritize it. And it's only when you have no time, for most people, that it seems really, really urgent. But it's there. It wants to know. And if you have trust, it will show you. Even if you don't know what to do, it will show you. And sometimes the signs are subtle. So you have to be attentive. But usually, they're quite in your face. The patterns you have to break, or the fears that you have, they're usually front and center. Because the universe is nice. You might not experience it as very nice. You might say, I've been dealt a shitty hand. But it shows you everything. You will say, but this situation is terrible, it's unsustainable, and I cannot stand it anymore. Yes. Because that's exactly what you've been shown. And the more you can stay as the present, the easier it can unfold. And if you get stuck in your mind, things go in a loop. So just notice if it seems to be the same again and again. If you notice yourself telling your friend, I just feel like I'm repeating myself. It's just the same patterns over and over. That is not how things unfold. That is how you identify with things. Then they can be on a loop. Because the universe is in itself very playful. It just wants to show you a lot of different flavors. But if you're just into strawberry, you will just see strawberry. If the mind is strongly projecting, it will just see that. If you're afraid of abandonment, life will bring you that. It seems so harsh, but that is just the universe showing you, here is your fear. Here is your chance to be with this fear and allowing it fully. The full flavor of that fear to express, and for you to be as you are. And maybe you've been pushing things away your whole life, creating resistance to a lot of things, try to mitigate and to control your mind. And then suddenly you notice that if you allow, it dissipates. It cannot stay. Thoughts only have power in distance. Fears only have power in distance. If you really allow it, if you feel it, if you sit with it, it cannot stay. Because it doesn't have the quality of staying. But if you resist it, it persists. And please don't believe me. Try it. If you haven't, try it. Any questions today? Everything clear? Very good. Yes, okay, please take the microphone.
How can you invite these fears? Like, if I feel I have everything under control, how can I then say, hello, come to me? Like,
yes, there has to be an experience of that fear. You cannot. Perhaps you can invoke it actually, but I find it easiest when it just comes very naturally. Because when the mind gets quiet, it is like there's a space that is created where it says, oh, all the things that you subdued, everything that you pushed down in your life, all those thoughts, all those emotions, now there's space for them to come up. And usually if you feel harmonious in your meditation, it feels very peaceful. This space starts to be there, and those feelings come up. But because it will be difficult if your mind is very chaotic and there's a lot of fears, and you're pulled to one thing or another, it will be very difficult to hold awareness with that, to stay with that, because the mind will be so fragmented. You'll be so quickly to identify with things. So if your mind is too busy at first, then you need to focus your mind. Keep your focus on one thing. Like the breathing through the nose, for example. You can just feel it. At first you take some conscious breaths and you feel how it feels in your nose when the air comes and goes. And then you relax and you just feel the natural breath. And you hold your attention there. And if you can hold your attention for like a minute, then the mind starts to relax. And you will usually experience some spaciousness. So this is a good first step. And then, in this spaciousness, and you can naturally rest in that, then if a fear comes, you can just say, okay, come. You can stay with it, but if your mind is too jumpy, it's very difficult, because you will so quickly identify with something. And maybe you won't even be aware of that the fear is coming. You will just jump onto something that triggers you with it. Was that? Yes, good. I just want to emphasize that meditation is not difficult per se. It's just that our minds can have tendencies to get stuck on things. And the difficulty with ignorance and arrogance is that they can just the egoic mind can play a game with you where you easily get stuck in loops, and you have such a nice story around that loop that you don't see that you're stuck. That's usually what happens. Or also the idea that you are beyond something. That is a very common idea to get stuck on. That you are beyond a fear, or you're beyond something because you know intellectually something, but you have not the experience. You understand? And when you start to notice the tricks that your mind play, you will be much more humble with it. Have you heard about this? I heard about they did some science on people's knowledge. Have you heard about this? That when people are quite in the beginning of things, they are usually so overconfident, and they think that they know a lot about it. Yeah. And the deeper they go into the subject, the less confident they get about that they know everything about it. So this is very common, and it's very common that you get stuck in the beginning because you have a very strong idea that you know what meditation is, when you absolutely don't. This is very common. You have an idea of this is what this is what it should be, and yes, can have just very, very, very strong opinions about I know what awareness is. You will say things like that. We have a question from Ralph.
Yeah. Funnily, you just talked about it. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Yes, very well.
Your example about I know what awareness is. I know how my workplace should work, and I get easily upset when things are slightly different.
Yes. And in the same way, do you get upset when you think that you're not with awareness? Because you know what it is?
Maybe. It's often a topic, at least. But as upset as I got today, I don't remember that I was engaged in talking about being aware or what consciousness is. So this complex situations on work can easily bring me into fear, and then kind of rigid opinions and harsh expressions.
Yes. But that is how identity works. It is very stiff.
Yes.
There is no fluidity much in identification. If identification is strong, it has all these. It has a very. It feels like it has a very pre-made path that it has to go. The options that you feel that you have are very black and white. It always feels like either this person runs over me, or I have to get really angry. It feels like all these very harsh choices. That is very much when there is strong identity. But
yes, and I want to be the white one and not the black one.
Yes, exactly. And you want to be on the right side of things. But the possibility in expression is much, much wider. And as soon as you're emotional...
It would be nice to realize it a little bit.
Sorry, what did you say?
Earlier. I said... I only realized that I am the right one after I was upset talking to somebody.
Yeah. And what do you mean by that? That you were on the right side of...
That I know better, and kind of, how to explain this? I don't know, it's just so much anger and fear at the same time.
Yes.
It is choosing words and expressions that are
Yes. And on all
without depth, and just
yes.
just wild finding somebody who is wrong.
Mm. Yes, but and this is what identification does. It blinds us completely, and we just look for scapegoats and we look for blame and all these things. And it's so important also to be right, and that to show that someone else is wrong. All these things, all those things are complete nonsense. They are not important. But in identification, they feel very important, and that you really have to emphasize them.
And how to wake up when I'm asleep.
Yeah, but when you're taken by them, it's usually quite difficult. Many of you have heard many times. I take the analogy with the roller coaster. If you bought the ticket, you have to go on the ride. So if the seed is sown, you will usually go with it and play out its course. But if you notice that there is a seed about to be sown, there is the awareness of that moment. Then you can be aware and not have to buy the ticket and go on the ride.
Yeah, that's a very subtle.
Yes, but what a regular meditation practice does is that it creates this momentum of being aware. And suddenly you just catch these things in the act. And some of them will just go with the vasanas. Do you know what vasanas is? Like when the mind starts to become spacious, then old tendencies start to come up. If there is space, then your old stuff, your old crap is coming up. And sometimes it just leaves. You just feel like the mind is more quiet, and the next time you come into a situation with this fear that you have perhaps had your whole life, it's not there. And that is a situation where you will notice that it's gone. But it can just go in this spaciousness, and if you just stay with and allowing the vasanas. So they can go like that, very, very easy. And there can be more deep-rooted vasanas that feel more prominent and that are more difficult. And many of our patterns that has to do with identity comes in that. So you could say that the practice itself, it's not that you have to catch every seed. Every time a thought comes, you don't have to catch it, but you have to stay as awareness. Come back to it again and again, and you will notice your mind. Because it's unavoidable in that. If you stay as awareness and not, because the identification of the mind is the belief that you are your thoughts. You understand?
No, it's a kind of tension that the body makes stiff, fear arises, and then And that might be triggered just by something is different than I expect. And then the ticket is bought, as you said.
Yes.
And this tension to catch this tension that is arising is, it seems I'm not yet there, at least.
No, and the most common way is that you feel surprised that you lost your balance because you're not aware of that. You just go with the old habit of something. When this happens, I do like this, and you have a belief with it. You're not allowing the moment to really happen because you have a predetermined idea of how I should react when someone tells me this. You understand? These kind of beliefs makes the mind very stiff. Because if you're not afraid in the present moment, you will just allow it to unfold. You will just see what happens. But if there is ideas of how you should protect yourself, then you become very stiff, very rigid. The mind becomes very rigid. And you're always on your toes. You're always ready to take a fight or flee or whatever you need to do. And you have that with you all the time. But that is a very tense state.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, beingness itself creates very much a relaxation of the present. And that's why it's good in all situations when you're out and about and you just stand in line and people are restless around you and the mind so easily goes to, I want to be at home, I want to be somewhere else, that you really stay with that. You come back to awareness because you're just waiting, so why not? And all these moments help. You build up a sort of a momentum of awareness through coming back to it time and time again. And the more time, because the more time you spend in the identified mind, the more you create of that. And you break it every time by just being aware of that there is thinking. It feels like such a trivial, to the egoic mind, it feels like such a trivial thing. Being aware of the body, being aware of the thinking mind feels such a small thing. But actually, that is what creates the quality of life. So it's a huge thing. But as no one is hardly talking about it in our society, the most what we're when we talk to people, they talk from the standpoint of the relative and egoic mind.
Yes.
No one in your workplace reminds you of Steos awareness if you're not working at a meditation center or something.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ralph. Yes.
I have the same question as Ralph, I think. So, it's very easy to, for example, on social media, to be irritated by what someone is writing.
To be triggered by something you see online.
If it's something that triggers you.
Yes.
And here we have something written by a person I don't know. I have no connection to this. And still it's something in me that wants to really it pushes a button to...
Yes.
tell this person how it really is or something. And I'm like, what's the point of like, it's just, I don't like the person I become when I get triggered by this.
Yes, of course.
But it's like scratch, how say,
Yes. An itch you want to scratch.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, have I bought the ticket already? And how do I diffuse it to not... because I told myself, okay, this is really not important. It's better you spend time on something, make a cup of tea or something good for you.
Yes. But there is a difference there. The difference is between, because you can tell yourself, this is not important. If you have, you're worried about something, you're worried about things the next day, and you can tell yourself it's not important. But does it matter? The mind goes back again and again to this worry thing, and it feels so, because in action, you make it important. But in words, you can say whatever you want, because they are not the same. So it's much more relevant to look at how you relate to things in the present moment than what you say about them. Do you understand the difference between these?
No. Or have to hear it again.
Yes. Because how you relate to things, in actuality, if you resist the thought, if you push it away, or if you really like a thought and you want more of it, whatever your relationship there is, can be completely different from what the mind story is about it. It can say, I don't care about these things so much. I don't care about what people, you will say to your friends, I don't care about what people write online. And when you sit in front of your computer and you look at these comments, you're like, people are idiots. I have to tell them. Then there is a mismatch between the story that you have and the actuality of it. And then there's just the awareness of the actuality of what happens in that situation. And if you come back to awareness time and time again, you will notice that things will seem less interesting. And this is in a beautiful way. Many things will drop their power. And that is what that means. We have also this built-in idea that the story in ourselves that things are important and engages us, and that we're passionate about things, and we just say, yes, I'm just so passionate about answering these comments online about this and this subject, and you have like a story that also just propels more of that. But the more you stay as awareness, you will notice that things are not so interesting. And the paradox with that is that you can be much more in tune and much more intimate in how you relate to people and things around you. Because you will not be taken, you will not be triggered, you will not be rigid, you will just allow the moment to unfold as it unfolds, and you see what happens. And that sounds so plain, but in reality, that is very beautiful. And people around you will also say, they will say things like, you always allow me to just be as I am. And that is the fragrance of awareness. And that is what we usually call love. That is what it is to really love someone. To allow them to be as they are. Because you allow yourself to be as you are. do you see? It's not such a foreign thing. It's so close.
When you said that one can allow another person be as
they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then that really diffused this itch.
Yes.
Because I feel I don't have to fix it.
No, and also for many people, they have the idea that, as I talked about before, also that they have to tell the world how to behave. And if you have that idea, you create a lot of tension, and you actually can propel the thing that you don't want to make that much stronger. If you say to a group of people, you shouldn't have these kind of thoughts, you shouldn't believe, they will just resist that. And they will fight for having that opposite thought. As soon as people feel pushed, they do that. The most diffusing thing is to not care. Because that, in a sense, allows people to just be. And I say that sometimes a thing that I love so much about my guru is that he doesn't care about me. And that sounds terrible, but he cares in the way that I know myself. But he doesn't care about having a relationship to me personally, that we have some kind of exchange of it, or that he wants something from me.
No need.
No need. And this, because most people don't understand what freedom is. They have not looked at what freedom is. And they don't know what freedom is for themselves, and they don't know what freedom is for others. Yes. Det är bara att prata.
But what if it's the other way around, that you, instead of getting angry, you shut down?
Yes, but that is...
You freeze.
Yes.
You're dead.
Yes.
Both physically and mentally.
Yes. But that is just another way to be triggered.
Yeah.
So that is just... it's just that the emotional response in that is different. But it is also the same.
Because I feel that the anger is easier to learn to take a step back and look at the situation and handle it differently.
Mm.
But when I'm physically shut down, I'm shut down.
Yes. So the difference between these two is just that in your psychological makeup, you're much more afraid of the shutting down than the anger part.
Mm.
So there's just more resistance to that, and that's why it seems bigger.
Mm.
None of them are really a problem. But as an idea, they're a big problem. Both of them can be. But in actuality, they are just the thing that is happening. But you have to buy the ticket and go for the ride. Because...
And sit with it. In this frozen situation as well. Stay with it.
Yes, and perhaps it just has to play its course. It's not always so given that it's so easy to stay with it, because the state, if there's a lot of fear, it can be a very identified state. But as I said, if you come back to awareness time and time again, you will notice when when you buy the ticket.
Mm. Yeah.
And also you will probably, if you just sit and there is spaciousness, these things will come. Because if this is a big fear in you, that will come up.
Mm.
And the mind is really good, as you know, to just play old scenarios and situations when they come back. And you don't have to do anything with them. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to make some great conclusion about them. Just allow them. As a beautiful teacher, Radha Krishna, told me, when you go to the toilet, you don't have to look and take a stick and poke around in it. Just flush.
Yeah.
Because it's just old crap coming up.
Mm.
And if you stay as awareness, you will just see them as things that come, stay for a while and go. They will seem much more neutral. And the more you observe your inner workings, the more neutral things will seem. Some of them will seem like they have some magnetic pull on you, but you can still observe them. And other things will seem like complete nonsense. But it's actually, none of the content has any power if you don't believe in it. You have to have a relationship of resistance or belief in it somehow for it to have that power.
Yeah.
There is no emotional content, there is no thought content that has a great power in itself. Because if that would be true, that would be true for all. But your fears are different than your fears, and your fears, and your fears. All are different.
But do you think it would be helpful to put yourself in these situations, but not in a smaller situation that you know that you might be able to handle, not the big situation?
Because that will give you a sense, the egoic mind will be at play in that. Because then it's like, I'm creating this situation but the old tendency will come up. Yeah. And it's better if it's completely out of control. You can, of course, always experiment. Don't be afraid to try things.
Yeah.
I think that many people are very cautious when it comes to their psychology. And if you stretch things and you try things a little bit, you also notice things. Yeah. But in creating scenarios consciously, it's very easy that the egoic mind is just, okay, this is control. So this version of it I can take, but I cannot take the real version. You understand? These kind of pockets can be created. That this is some kind of light version of it. But maybe that is what is needed for you because you feel like it's too big.
I'm just thinking sometimes when I teach yoga and people get sad or scared or angry, if I approach them like they were really small, many times it helps. Because usually when somebody is angry or sad or scared, they're really small.
Yes. But the identified mind is very much like, is very childlike, is very, very simple. Because it also, when we are children, when the ego forms really, it takes such a almost ridiculous expressions. It's so much mine. It's like almost too much.
Yeah.
And these very, very simple identifications. And when we go into identity a lot, adults have the same, they just have a nicer story. But the emotional content is very much on this very childlike level.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I end up there too, that I feel envy and I want to be met that way too.
But how we are, the deepest version of how we are being met is how we relate to what we call ourselves. If there is self-love, then the need for someone to validate us and this is very, very different. And as soon as we long for something external, it is because it is not here. We have the sense that it's not here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have to sing. We have to sing. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, 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 Jai Jai Shri Radhe. 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 Thank you, thank you, thank you.